time for that break.
Okay.
All right. Okay, everyone. I didn't properly introduce myself. I'm Jerry Simmons. I'm currently working for the University of Maryland's Indigenized SNAC project as the lead of the SNACSchool. I've been working on SNAC since before it was even called SNAC, as long ago as 2009 and 2010, when the concept was still in its research and discovery phase, development phase. Later on in my work at the National Archives and Records Administration, I became the SNAC operations coordinator and also the lead of the SNAC school. We started SNAC school in 2017. And as we see, as we mentioned already today, we are now officially today kicking off version 5.0 of the training program. So this is module 3, create and edit. In the lead up to SNAC school, you were all presented with or had shared with you a spreadsheet of person names and corporate body names, and in some cases family names if you chose to do one. Scotty shared that spreadsheet over the past several weeks, and you were able to sign up, or we assigned you a name to work on in SNAC school. That's where you'll find the name, possible variants, and finding aid with which you'll work to create your new records today. So we're going to get started, and we're going to follow the pattern that Jodi set up in module 2, starting with corporate body records. Our objectives for this module are to learn how to search SNAC to support our authority work, how to learning to create SNAC records, learning how to edit an existing SNAC record, and then learning how to request review for your SNAC records. So if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and log into your SNAC Dev training account and follow along with your entity example as I work through the examples that Jodi presented in the previous module. So the first required step for your entity's name is to make sure that it doesn't already exist in SNAC. So then from the SNAC editor's dashboard, you can do several types of searches to make sure that you're not about to create something that's already in the system. Now, you have by now a copy of the slide, so you can excuse me, so you can follow along as I do the live demo of how to create the names. At any point during this demo, please let me know if I need to stop, slow down, and we can address any issues that come up, because this is going to be a very a labor-intensive and sort of a very detailed step-by-step process, but it's one that we cover in SNACSchool so that everyone has the same experience of the detailed steps that go into creating the new records. I'll be using the examples from Module 2, so I'll be starting with the Institute of American Indian Arts as my corporate body example. Oops, sorry about that. And I'm going to be toggling over to SNAC Dev. Okay, and here I am at my editor's dashboard. And the first step will be to search for the Institute of American Indian Arts. I've done it several times as practice and preparation, so it knows my searches already. I'm also going to try searching it through the more advanced or the broader search. And there are no results there. And last, I'll try it as a browse search. As Ugoma mentioned earlier, you've got a lot of options for searching in SNAC. I can run that there and have results come back. You also have the option of resetting your filter. Looking for all types of names is a good approach, so you know that if there might be a name that's been misidentified as a person and not a corporate body, or a family and not a corporate body, you'll find all of the matching results in this type of a search. Or you can filter down your results to only corporate body responses or returns. and you go down to the middle of the page in the browse search that puts your closest match at the very center of the page so that you can see the alphabetical choices above and below. But clearly it is not in the system yet. So I'm going to go up and go to dashboards, go back to editor, and this is where I'm going to start my create example for the corporate body. To do that, and now that we know that there are no duplicate or there's no SNAC record for this name in the system, we'll go create new constellation. And you start with the SNAC editing page where you enter your basic information. The first required step is to declare the entity type, and this will be a corporate body. And once that's done, move down to name components, add component. And because there are no subordinate issues or subdivision name issues with this particular entity, I'm simply going to assign it as name component, and I'm going to drop in Institute of American Indian Arts. I'm going to establish this as the preferred form, and then I'm going to code automatically for the language and the script of the name itself. The name itself is in English and Latin default by tapping the magic wand symbols at the end. There are a number of language code choices in SNAC. If your name is in a different language, you can search them here. We do have the new set of ISO 639-3 language codes installed in SNAC Dev, and they're, I believe, about to be entered in or added to the SNACcooperative.org production system. If the name is in French, you would search for FRA for Francais. The ISO codes differ from the MARC codes. If you're familiar with using MARC codes for languages and scripts, are a bit different, and they're formed against the actual name of the language. But this one is in English, so we can do English and Latin. Excuse me. The last step here is to add your rules information. Click Add Rule. For the form, you will make this authorized because authorized equals preferred. And the rule set will always be RDA. Note that we have in the rule selections AACR2 and AACR1. Those are placeholders for old data that was ingested into SNAC years ago. And because those name forms were very old, they have kept the content standard coding along with it. But from here forward, SNAC only accepts RDA formed names. So we always choose RDA. Now that that information is all squared away there, scroll back up and click Continue under User Actions. SNAC will push you through what's called reconciliation results. SNAC will scan the entire authority file to make sure that you are aware of other closely matching headings already in the system. Now, we all sort of covered this ourselves by doing those three searches, the general search and the browse search and the more advanced search. But this gives you one last point or time to check that you're not going to duplicate anything. Once you're sure that you're not duplicating anything, click Create New Constellation. So then note that the editing screen changes a bit more. And what you're seeing now is the full SNAC record entry screens. So the name entries tab, the history tab, demographics, relations, corporate, sources, and then control data. We're going to cover input on almost all of these elements as we go through this exercise. So we also know from the research that we've done, and I've got tabs open here on my screen for the Institute of American Indian Arts, we know for a fact that there is a variant, a very common variant for this name, and it is right here, the IAIA. That I will enter as a variant name. To do that, go back to your Name Entries tab and click the Add New Name Entry, then Add Component, Name IAIA. This is going to be the non-preferred or the variant form of the name, so we're going to leave the toggle on to not preferred, but we are going to still code for English and Latin, and then adding our rule information will be a bit different from the previous step. We will choose alternative because this is the variant form, but our rule set will always be RDA. So there's the variant name. I'm going to save. To save your information, go up to the far left right under SNAC and click Save. And there we go. Are there any questions about adding name forms? Okay. Now, from my research, I determined there are no other variants to be found. So I'm going to move forward and move to the History tab. On the History tab, we have Biog Hist, which of course for persons and families is the biography note, and then the history note if it's a corporate organization name. We have Exist Dates, and we have Places. Let's start with Biog Hist. SNAC provides you a simple editing screen for your biography and your history. Click Edit on the right and open up the editing screen. But it's important not to try to re-author a history note or a biography note for your entity. What you can do is simply go to web pages, preferably the one of that entity, and copy out information that you feel is sufficient for adding as a history or a biography note. So in order to make things a little bit more cosmetic on your big notes like these, you can code in paragraph breaks using XML coding. Just like that. Again, each element we treat today and you will treat going forward will have a language and script element. And so just magic wand those in there. And after adding text like this, I always save. Now I'm going to do exist dates. According to the history note we just added, the Institute of American Indian Arts was founded on October 1st, 1962. So we're going to take that information. You don't really have to copy and paste it. We do know for a fact from our research that the IAIA is still alive and going. It's still a very active agency. So there's no end date. There's no disestablishment date, but there is an establishment date. So let's click Add New Date. We take the year first, the month, and then the day. Wherever you're entering date information, SNAC will always give you the option to enter that as a natural language statement. It's only optional, but here's a demo of how that happens. The last step here on exist dates is to designate the type. This is the establishment date, and then save. The last element on the history tab is places. This is a place where you can enter geographic place names that relate to your entity. We know for a fact from our research on the IAIA web pages, that it's located in, I know it's in here somewhere. Oops, that's probably a bit too much. We know from, and I did also research on Wikipedia, and that tells us that it is located in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Here's the information here. So that means that we can go back to the SNAC record and add a new place. And we'll simply start searching for Santa Fe. Note that it brings in a number of geographic headings with that name, and you have to sort of like pick down through the list to make sure that you're grabbing the one from New Mexico. It starts out with Rancho Santa Fe, which is in California, and then other geographic places with that name. But here's Santa Fe, New Mexico, US. So we add that there. There is a way to designate the specific address of a corporate body or an organization. Under type, you would assign address, and then under role, you really have only a few choices here. Work would be one, so this is where the agency does its work in Santa Fe, New Mexico, but you can also then add in the specific street address. And for that, you would go back to your web page, and perhaps even the Wikipedia page, because it seems to present it more clearly. And you can lift out this this information by copy and paste, and then add other elements there as they're warranted. So the city, state, and even the postal code. I'm going to make sure I'm taking that from the source, if I can find it. Maybe not. Might have to do a little bit more looking around on their web page to find that. Hoping that I can do that rather quickly. See if they have address information at the bottom. Yes, they do. I'm going to copy and paste out that zip code, and I'm going to drop that there. The reason why I'm demonstrating this is to let everyone know that once this information is embedded into the SNAC record for an organization, and once saved, it will sync up with SNAC's mapping feature. You see there's a pink area here with a pin drop. Once everything's saved and we view the record, we can see from going from this record for the IAIA that we can see where it exists on a map. And that will help us tie in information later on about resources, like archival resources and collections, and where they're physically located if the IAIA is the actual holding repository for those materials. Okay, so there's Santa Fe. I'm going to save that. And that's its related place. Are there any questions at this point, and is everyone having an okay go of getting the information into their SNAC record?
Grace had a question. She said, if our entity doesn't have a website or isn't the main focus of the linked finding aid, should we compose a bio-his note ourselves?
Does the finding aid have biography and history information in it?
It does not for the corporate body that I've been assigned. It has it's the finding aid for personal papers of two people associated with that corporate body, but it doesn't actually have any kind of description of the corporate body.
And are you able to find that corporate body online, like through Wikipedia or some other source?
There's a couple of documents produced by that corporate body that are held by the Ann Arbor District Library, but they don't have any kind of internet presence.
Well, so it to get going, you can enter other aspects of your SNAC record and move past the history note.
Okay.
I should mention at this point that none of these elements are required to move forward and save the record. The
Great.
only requirements are the name and the entity type, which we took care of on this tab. That's interesting though, but that just means that you might end up doing additional research to find or to compose a history note for your organization.
Sounds good.
Okay, great question. Anyone else? And feel free to just unmute and ask a question. I am not able to monitor the chat from here, but someone let me know if there's a burning question that I should cover before we move on.
There is another
Yes.
question from Megan. She put, I have an expedition for my corporate buy for the places with the type be associated place and the role work.
Yes, it would be associated place. And that was, I'll open this to edit again. The other option there under type is associated place. But when we make the take the option to add a specific street address, then we set it as address. But the other option there is associated place.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, the demographics tab generally has information or smaller elements that relate more to persons than to organizations, though under subjects are like a general topical relation that you can add here. Again, art, I think, is one of them. There you go. And even probably Indian artists. These are things, these are subjects that can be used outside for searching through the many millions of records in SNAC that, so if you can further identify any entity with subjects, it's oftentimes helpful for searching afterwards. And these can be repeated as many times as warranted from what you're finding in your research. We'll talk more about the demographics tab when we move on to our person name. Okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to hop over to my slides to make sure that I'm caught up so that we're all moving in the same direction at the same time. Pardon the quick scroll. And the next big element for the SNAC record is relating the entity name to the actual description of its archival materials, wherever they exist and no matter where they're kept and what repository. This is where we make the first big step into what SNAC does differently than other authority files don't really do. This is because SNAC relates in context an entity, especially a creating entity, to the materials it's created, and it takes the user to those materials, or at least a finding aid to those materials, wherever they're stored. So you all have access from that spreadsheet to the finding aid. So this is where we'll start entering that finding aid information in direct relationship to the corporate body name. So this is where we'll start. I have a lot of tabs open behind the scenes to help me with this. So I'm going to go back to the record. I'm going to save it again. SNAC unfortunately doesn't have an automatic save like we have become very accustomed to in Google and other platforms like that, where it automatically saves every few seconds. But we have to make sure to reach up there to the left and save. So I'm going to move on to the Relations tab. And under the Relations tab, we have three elements that we'll be entering here: resource relations, internal CPF relations, and external related CPF. Okay, so to get started, we're going to link the Institute of American Indian Arts through the resource relations to a description of some of its records that are held at the Brooklyn, excuse me, I can't remember the name, the Brooklyn Museum and Libraries. And so I'm sorry about that. And this is how we get started. Here is my finding aid. The collection is called institutional file. And then it is created by, appears to be clearly created by the Institute of American Indian Arts, though it is held in another institution. There's a permalink and other kinds of options you can do. But the descriptive information is further down in the catalog record. And we're going to use a lot of this information to fill in the resource relation information. Okay. I'm going to go back here and add new resource relation. And the first step, I'm sorry, that noise you hear is my dog snoring. I wish, right? Is important to have the link to the finding aid. The permalink on this particular platform is here. And I'm going to copy the permalink and come back, and I'm going to search it within the finding aid cache or the resources cache in SNAC. During the research and development phase and the overall creation of SNAC, millions of authority records, tens of thousands of EAD finding aids, and several thousand EAC CPF authority records were loaded into SNAC as part of the ingest data building for the system. That means that when a EAD finding aid came into the system, it was cached with the other resources, and resources generally meaning any descriptive device like a finding aid or a catalog record that describes the actual archival collections, or more broadly, any cultural heritage materials about or by a particular entity. So I'm going to search the system on that link for the description at the Brooklyn Museum. I'm going to drop the link in there and then make it do a search. And as expected, there are no results found. I've made sure that the finding aid isn't already in the system so I can demonstrate how you all will create them. Now that I know that that finding aid is not in the system, I click Create New Resource, and you get a new dialog page. I'm going to make my screen a bit smaller so we can see more of it together. And this is the Create Resource dialog. There are two required elements here. You have to declare a resource type. So that's the type of materials that are in the collection. So archival resources, bibliographic resources, which we do not use. Please do not select this. That's a placeholder for old OCLC WorldCat data, but also digital archival resources and oral history resource. Digital archival resource is a resource type you can designate to your related resources that tells users this is in the collection is entirely available online, and like every item, it has to be every item so that everything is a digital archival resource. And then of course oral history, that's obvious. For this, we are going to designate archival resource, and then we're going to add in the title. I'm going to go back to my Brooklyn Museum example, and for here it's simply institutional file. You see that everything is, we were prompted for everything: title, author, artist, description, notes, all that good stuff. So basically copy and paste from that resource. There is a place for dates, but you notice there are no asterisks on these. You don't have to. There are optional additions here to the information, but since we have it here in front of us, we're adding it. We already know that the Institute of American Indian Arts is the author or artist. The description, it's really extent here, isn't it? It is, that's the extent. And then we have a place for notes, and this is really the summary. So we'll take that. take the whole thing really. There we go. And drop that in here. We've already put in the extent. By the way, the abstract field can be expanded a bit for more comfortable editing. Again, there's the ever popular language indicator here. This is specifically speaking to the language and script of the finding aid itself. So the magic wand here automatically does English and Latin, but if any of this information is in a foreign language or a language other than English, which is the default through the magic wand, then you would change the language here. If it's in French, you would choose Francais and then Latin. And if there's another script, like if it's Russian and your script is Cyrillic, you have that option. But because it is not, we can simply get rid of that one, but code in something new. This little red square with the white dot and the red dash is what you can use to remove information from your editing screen that will not be saved. Okay, the last, really one of the most important steps other than that link, and notice that I didn't put the link in, it pulled it away from my search when we were first starting this process and automatically dropped that link into the resource link field here. The holding repository, you search it here. Holding repositories are all corporate bodies in SNAC, and they most likely have their own records. So Brooklyn, but I have to spell it correctly. We get a lot of them. Brooklyn Museum, Library, and Archives. There we go. Sorry, I can't. There we go. And then once you've filled in all this information about your about the resource, click Continue, and it moves you back to the editing screen for Institute of American Indian Arts. The last step here is to declare the role type, and in this case, we are creating the statement that says Institute of American Indian Arts, and there's the arrow pointing towards this collection called institutional file, and we are designating them as the creator of, and notice that SNAC updates that statement there, and then save. So this is just one example of how to get this done. You may end up doing this numerous times, depending on how many collections, archival collections, or other cultural heritage material collections that you choose to relate to your entity. And this can be repeated over and over again as you need. So I usually slow down and take a breath here because this is there are so many steps built into the resource relations that I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. How is everyone doing? Okay. I'm going to take just a second to catch up on my slides. Please note, and you might have noticed, well, both Ugoma and Jodi were moving through their demonstrations, is that we have developed these slide decks to provide our users with a step-by-step sort of a user manual for doing this kind of work in SNAC. So everything you see me doing is reflected in slides with a lot of detailed information, I will say. Okay, which brings us to linking entities in context within SNAC's authority file, so the internal CPF relations. And I'm going to go back to my record, and on the Relations tab, click down and click Internal CPF Relations. So in this particular case, you can link the IAIA to persons, families, and maybe possibly other organizations as well. So I know for a fact from my, pardon me while I look at my slides. Full disclosure, this is the first time we're teaching it. I'm teaching this particular example, so I need to refresh my memory. I know from my research that Lloyd New and George Boyce were both founders or co-founders of the Institute of American Indian Arts. And I found that information through Wikipedia and through their website, and maybe even some other sources. Really, you are welcome to use whatever sources that you find reliable to gather this type of information. So now I want to create internal relationships between the IAIA and its founders. So click Add New Constellation Relation, and simply search for the person's name. You can do a keyword search. You might have a lot to sort of dig through on that. The more specific you can be, the better off you are. And I've entered this person's name with first name, last name, and then middle name, but you see that SNAC still finds it. So there's Lloyd New's record. I'm going to click the little radio button there, and then blue button for create relation. And the type here can be a number of types. Here they are, a good number of them. You can start searching for founded by and add that there. And note that SNAC creates this explicit statement for us: Institute of American Indian Arts, founded by Lloyd Henry Kiva New, and save. And for the co-founder, George Boyce, so simply remove that name and the search clears itself. I think that's it. Whoops, I'm going to check again. 1898. There he is, George A. Boyce, 1898 to 1976. So click there with the button. Notice that there are a lot of George Boyces here, or matches for that search. But then click create relation. And he is also he was one of the co-founders. So we're going to do founded by again. And there. So you can, like with the resource relations, you can add as many internal CPF relations as warranted by your research. It is important to note, however, that if there isn't a name in SNAC that you want to use as a relation, you would have to create that name as well, have it reviewed, have it published, and then move forward, come back and edit the record to add relations. Though I made sure that I could find my two in here to move through to the example. Okay. Now, if I need to pause and answer any questions before we move on to the last element here, and we'll be only a few more steps to go before we take our break. I'm going to move on to external related CPF. So, as the name says, or as the label says, this is a way of relating your entity to an external description of your entity, meaning more specifically that if your entity has an authority record in another system, like the Library of Congress Name Authority File, Wikidata, Find a Grave, not for corporate bodies, but for people, and a number of other sources like VIOF, the Virtual International Authority file. You can add those relationship links here, and once we see the published version of this record, we'll see how you can jump from a SNAC description of one entity out to an authority record for that same entity in a different resource. So let's start here. I'm going to, because I have the example for Wikipedia up for the Institute of American Indian Arts, I'm going to use that specific example. Let me make sure that I'm not jumping to something I don't. Oh, I see. I'm in the slide. So let me correct. I appreciate. I'll go ahead and say how much I appreciate everyone being patient with us today as we roll out this new version of SNACSchool, anticipating perhaps that we will have to take some pauses for the instructors to get their, specifically Jerry, to get his head on straight. Your slides will have the example for relating it to the Library of Congress authority file. So I'm going to do that. Let me open a new tab and go to id.loc.gov, Institute for American Indian Arts. I'm going to narrow down my search to name authority because the idloc.gov is the linked open data resource for all the data sets maintained by the Library of Congress. And you won't want to have to sort of pick through those other data sets to find what you're looking for. We're really looking for the authority record from the name file, and you might have to go down a bit. It's in Library of Congress. I find it shockingly, perhaps ironic too, that they don't present their search results in alphabetical order. That's been on my suggestions list for the Library of Congress for quite some time. At any rate, here's the authority record for Institute of American Indian Arts found at the Library of Congress name authority file, and there's the record. To make the link connection in your SNAC record for Library of Congress, you go up into the link and you take the number that follows in, but stopping at the period before HTML. It's very specific, but again, these steps are all laid out in your slides. I go back to my SNAC record and click Add New Same As Relation, which is external related CPF. Under External Authority, there is an approved pick list of the different authority resources SNAC currently recognizes. Scrolling down, you will find LOC/NACO name authority file, and that's where we're making this link. And in the authority ID, I paste in that number I just clipped out of the Library of Congress authority record, and I save it. So that's officially the example that happens in your slides. And we have additional training resources in the SNACSchool resources that give specific examples for a good number of these external authority files. I'm going to add one more because it's quite straightforward. Here's the Wikipedia article for the IAIA. And if you go over to Tools on the right-hand side there and scroll all the way down to Wikidata item, it's going to move you to the Wikidata entry for this entity. The number we're interested in Wikidata is what I call the Q code, or those digits. What is that? Like 7 digits following the Q. I'm going to copy that, go back to my record, and under External Authority, scroll all the way down and select Wikidata, and then paste in the code there and save. The next tab over is corporate description, and under that is one active element, and it's activities. Activities are what we used to call function terms when we describe corporate entities, and now the going term is activities. So you can add as many of these as are warranted by your example. Let me make sure I'm catching up on the slides before we get too far. Oops, pardon me. And some of the functions that we know are performed by the IAIA, education. She went for higher education, education higher. What was that other one? Pardon the quick, promoting the fine arts. Promoting a lot of stuff, promoting arts, promoting the fine arts. And you have to do a bit of pecking around here. There it is. And again, you can add as many of these activity terms that are as warranted by your research. And there could be many of them, but as long as you're basing them somewhere in your research, you're fine. Okay, the last big step for creating the corporate body records is going to be adding your sources. Sources are different than your resources. Resources, which we entered here, are the descriptions, so finding aids, catalog records, any other descriptive instrument taking you to descriptions of the material of the archival collections themselves. And it can be, I'll always want to add in, it can always be any collection description that's found for any type of collection, not just archival, traditional archival records and personal papers, but also museum objects and galleries, special libraries. Wherever you can find a link to the description, then you're set. Those are your resources. The sources here in SNAC create a little bibliography for your SNAC record. You cite the sources that you've used while constructing your SNAC record. And I've used Wikipedia. I have used the official web page for the IAIA. So I'm going to sort I am going to cite these as part of my sources. And to do that, it's rather straightforward. So please feel free to copy these examples. A simple citation with the title and the date that you saw the information, but then the found data. And you don't have to take the entire article here. Just take part of it and paste that into your found data. I oftentimes follow this with ellipses that indicates to a future reader of this record that here's a sample of what I found at this particular source, and there's more there to see. Code your language and your script, but for these, make sure that you're going back and taking the ever important link here and installing that in your record so that future users of this record can quickly follow to the sources that you've already consulted. I'm going to add one more for the IAIA's website. So a simple citation statement indicating the source title or the title of that source and then the date that you saw it. We can go to, let's see, where was our about? There it is, about, mission and history, all that good stuff, and just take out information, just enough to make it clear. Code for language and script, and then make sure that you're taking the link and installing it in the URI line, and then save. Again, all of these steps are covered in detail in the slides. So what happens now is that you should have your record completely finished. And once you've saved it one last time, you're ready to send it to your reviewer so that they can make comments on it and send back information about changes that need to be made, corrections of errors, anything really. We have I'm a reviewer, Ugoma's a reviewer, and Jodi is a reviewer. Scotty, you're reviewing this time, yes? Okay. That I'm trying to catch up, going to get in the slides. There was the sources tab, the slide. We talked about record review, and there are the steps there again described. And I want to we slow down a little bit here with subordinate names for corporate bodies. I know that I think there's one person on the spreadsheet that has a Smithsonian corporate body name that's subdivided, so I wanted to make sure that we're covering these particular steps. Earlier in the, hold on, I'm sorry. In SNACSchool, Jodi covered subordinate corporate body names in Module 2 under all the details about authority control. The example we use for subdividing corporate body names is the Field Projects Division of the Getty Conservation Institute. The finding aid, their clip out is there. One of the things that sets these types of name apart, this type of name apart, is the fact that it has division in it. Jodi presented that one slide about direct and indirect subdivisions for corporate body names, and this is a really good example of it. Field projects division, standing alone by itself, would not be a helpful entry into an authority file. It has division there. Field projects, I think some could argue that that's pretty specific for the name of the division, but a division of what larger organization, I think, is really the question. So according to the approach of RDA and the traditional entry of corporate body names, those that have these very vague divisions to them get entered subordinately under a higher level corporate body name to clarify the relationship between the two. So I'm going to be using this example, and I'm just going to copy and paste for right now so I can get back into, I'm going to go back to my SNAC dev account. I'm going to go to dashboards. I'm going to run the search. Oh, by the way, I mentioned earlier with the review requests in the message center, as soon as you get a message in your message center area, SNAC will show you this yellow box here to let you know. Again, up here beside message to the right is an indicator of 2. It means that you have 2 new emails in that message center. Okay, we can search for the projects division. Oh, look, Jerry forgot to delete it. Okay, pretend like you didn't see that. And this is how you create it. You go to New Constellation, Corporate Body, and create name. And the name starts with, of course, the Getty Conservation Institute. And the subordinate name would be Fields Project Division. And the component that you designate here is subdivision name. I'll paste that in, but I'm going to take away the top part of the name. And that's how you would enter a subordinate name. Now notice that SNAC automatically adds in any necessary punctuation that you need to separate the levels of your name. So you don't have to do that. You never have to add any punctuation at the end of your name elements. We're going to designate it as preferred, English, Latin, form is the authorized form, and rule set, of course, is RDA. And then you continue moving through your reconciliation steps, create new constellation, and then proceed as you normally would, adding elements for a corporate body heading in SNAC. So those are really those are the only maybe that step, those two steps there, dividing the name up between name and subdivision name are really the only two things you need to be aware of when dealing with one of these subordinate names. I'm going to quickly push that to publish to get it off my screen.